stop shaking yesterday's blues, yeah. Turn the TV off, this bad news, man.
Welcome to The Sports Show. Good morning and welcome to The Sports Show here on Lake Effect Radio and streaming live at lakeeffectradio.org/studio. I'm your host, Ryan Kirby. We have a great show for you guys this morning. We'll be talking about all things college football, and also we'll be talking about the NFL and looking at the games yesterday and last night. Before we start talking about about college football, I want to let everybody who is listening either in breakers or at home know that you can join the conversation by tweeting at me at Ryan_Kirby on Twitter. That's Ryan with a capital R _Kirby with a capital K. 19 on Twitter. Now, joining me in studio are two of my good friends who came here from West Virginia, Jimmy Gaudio and Joe Wargo. How are you guys doing this morning?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Now I'm guessing you're probably upset about you two are probably upset about the West Virginia loss on Saturday against Oklahoma State, since both of you attend West Virginia University. West Virginia, if you did not watch the game, lost to Oklahoma State 45-41. West Virginia quarterback Will Grier went 27 of 48 for 364 yards and 2 touchdowns. West Virginia will be hosting number 6 Oklahoma next week in the regular season finale. Now, when you guys look at West Virginia, if they were to beat Oklahoma next Saturday, do you see them playing for the Big 12 championship?
Well, if they beat Oklahoma, they will definitely be in the Big 12 championship game. All they have to do is win, or they also need a Texas loss, because right now we have the tiebreaker over Texas because we beat them in Austin. So right now, us and Texas, we're sitting at 6-2 in the conference, tied for second. But because we had that tiebreaker right now, we're technically in second at 6-2, like I just said. But yeah, we need either of those two to happen. We either need to win or we need a Texas loss. So say we lose, but Texas also loses, we're in.
Now, what if West Virginia wins and Texas wins? I haven't looked at the scenarios.
Yeah, then we still would get in the Big 12 championship game because we had that tiebreaker.
Right.
But if we lose, I don't think Texas is gonna lose to Kansas.
Yeah.
When you look, you even look at Kansas. Facing who did they face last?
They faced Oklahoma. They played them pretty tough. I think it was 55-40 was the final score.
Right.
It was a high scoring game, but
right.
All Big 12 games are high scoring because there isn't the greatest defense, but
right.
But Kansas made it pretty close.
Kansas 1-7 in the conference this year, so.
Right, and then you also look at West Virginia. Was it 1 or 2 losses this year?
We have 2
overall?
losses now. We lost to Iowa State at Iowa State, so we're
right.
2-2 on the road, and then we're undefeated at home right now.
Right, but everybody's got to be undefeated at home. You're playing at home, so. But you also look at Will Grier is a senior this year, so I don't know if has there been any confirmation of him entering the draft, because I say he could be very easily.
There definitely has. He'll probably be like a late first rounder, maybe.
I heard the Patriots possibly. That's what I was hearing.
There's possibilities galore with that, but also he kind of reminds me a little bit of Baker Mayfield. A little bit of that. He can scramble and throw on the run a little bit. You look at what he did
against a
against
couple of those plays,
right?
For sure against Texas, the game-winning play
right.
was. As you saw, it was at the end. He was throwing off 1 foot, somehow managed to put it right on the money.
Right.
Similar to what Baker Mayfield's done this year.
Right. And you bring up that play as well as you look at what Tebow did. The famous jump. What was it? The jump throw. When Tebow was at Florida. A lot of these newer quarterbacks are getting into that mentality of either I can scramble or I can just do almost like a little jump. Almost like a toss over the defense, but. Hopefully, West Virginia, they have been very good, over time. This surprised me only because you look at Oklahoma State, they're decent, but they're not, upper echelon.
Well, they played Oklahoma pretty hard last week, too, which is...
Yeah, Oklahoma State's a tough team to especially go to Oklahoma State and play them there.
Right.
It's definitely
I could see
tough environment.
I can see why they call it I can see why they call it Bedlam. It was probably very loud. Very loud, and it was probably a ruckus crowd. And you'll also look at, talking about Will Grier, you see him, against Texas, getting that rushing touchdown that he had. How, these defenses, these Big 12 defenses, they prepare for, okay, he's either going to throw the ball or he's going to run, or he's going to, run the ball a little bit. They don't prepare for these, packages of, okay, he could very easily do a fake or this or that. But you watch Oklahoma State, it seemed like they were very, they knew what was coming each and every play.
It was pretty much because they shut down the run game in the second half because our running back, McCoy, because our main running back, Petaway, got hurt.
Right.
McCoy in the first half had 131 yards, but then in the second half, they limited him to, I believe it was, let me find it here, 17 yards in the second half. So Kennedy McCoy really limited, and that's kind of where Oklahoma State was able to really figure us out, because from that point, after they shut down the run game, they were able to easily just telegraph our deep balls.
Right.
So
I mean, when you look at Will Grier, I mean, he is a runner. I mean, he can run the ball, but
a little bit. But
right.
Only like short runs that he can maybe pick up a first down for, but he's not gonna go out and run the ball very often.
Right.
He's more of a traditional quarterback where drop back and throw instead of run the ball like some of these other quarterbacks like Tua. And
Right.
I don't think Dwayne Haskins doesn't really run the ball much, but
Right. I mean, he's got a good arm, but
some of these college football quarterbacks these days, when you see like at the bigger schools, they're a dual threat, and that's what makes them really good in college.
Right.
And then when they make it to the pros,
Yeah.
they're not as good because you get lit up.
Right.
So yeah.
I mean, you look at that. You also, I mean, what was it yesterday? Lamar Jackson made his first career NFL start with Baltimore.
Yeah.
And he looked like that guy we saw at Louisville. I mean, he ran the ball very well. And you talk about, these guys who are, they'll get lit up in the NFL. He didn't get hit very much in the backfield, it didn't seem.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you put Will Grier in the NFL, I mean, you put him up with a very good offensive line and up against a very good defense. I'll put an example out there, the Chicago Bears. You put him up against the Bears defense. I mean, he won't have much trouble dealing with that defense. I know, you look at Khalil Mack with the Bears. I mean, who knows? But, I mean, in my opinion, personally, I could see Will Grier being a mid-first rounder. I mean, you said, what did you say, late first round?
Possibly, yeah.
I could see him
It
being...
kind of depends how teams will look at him.
Right.
It's all up in the air. It really depends on who's drafting where in the draft and who needs a quarterback at a certain time. It's all up in the air. But I don't see him being anywhere early in the first round.
Right.
I mean, I'm not really sure how deep this draft. I don't think this draft is too deep in quarterbacks like it was last year.
I'd say I think Tua is he a senior? Tua Tagovailoa, or is he a freshman?
What is Tua? Jeez, he's a sophomore.
Sophomore?
They put him in last year in the national championship game, and he was a freshman. They're talking about, they're putting in a freshman in the national championship, and he came through. So, yeah, he is a sophomore. And Jalen Hurts, I believe, is a junior.
Yes.
And he's been benched pretty much this entire season, except for that, like, the first game. They played them both in the first half.
Right.
Or they played them both a half each, and then they ended up
Right.
deciding on Tua, and the rest is history because they've had a really good season.
Right.
But
I mean, and you also look at, you look at Alabama. I mean, the crazy things we were talking about on the way here, the Citadel was tied with Alabama at the end of the first half. I mean, who would have thought that?
I think it was, they didn't go, they were at halftime. I think they were up by more than 17. I think it was 17 points. Did you see that? Versus every single team when they got to halftime. I'm pretty sure that was the stat I saw.
the Citadel.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
They're now, what are they, like 4-7 now?
I mean, who knows? But I mean, you think
shocked.
about it. I mean, who would have thought a team like the Citadel would be tied with Alabama at halftime? I mean, personally, I would have thought, Bama would be up by, 24 points at half. I did not think that would have, to see that score. I'm like, okay, no, that's not possible. But I mean, you also look at Alabama next week, facing Auburn. Now, I'm going to put this scenario out there. If Alabama were to lose to both Auburn and then Georgia in the SEC championship game, do you see West Virginia, bouncing up into the top 10?
Probably not. I honestly think our time is up now because I know the committee looks at games like that you lose later in the year, and they kind of judge you harder on those games because usually games that you lose at the beginning of the year. So, for example, Michigan, they lost to Notre Dame. They're not going to really judge them too hard on that loss because that was way in the beginning of the year. But it was also against a good team, so I mean, you can't really penalize them too much. But again, like I'll use another example. Ohio State a couple years ago lost to Virginia Tech in like the very beginning of the year. It was one of like the first 3 games, and they ended up making the college football playoff because their loss was way earlier in the season compared to a loss at the end of the season because they got hot at the end of the year.
Right.
So really, I think when it comes to the end, I mean, when they look at losses earlier in the year, they don't judge them as hard because you could improve as the season goes on. That's what Ohio State did.
Right.
So now looking at West Virginia, the end of the season loss is going to hurt us, and it was against a 5-5 Oklahoma State team that's still good, because they're against top 25 teams this year. They're 4-0 against the spread, and overall they're 3-1 against top 25 teams. They beat Boise State, West Virginia, and Texas, and they were a 2-point conversion away from going 4-0 because Cornelius, their quarterback, missed a wide open receiver in the end zone to win the game and go for 2 against Oklahoma. So they were almost, like I said, 4-0 against top 25 teams this year.
I mean, you also think about, you talk about, the losses late in the year. You look at Michigan, I mean, they had a loss against Notre Dame the first game of the season, and you look at where Notre Dame's at, they're at number 3. It kind of blows my mind only because, that one loss with Michigan was to a good team, or a good team that's now up in the top 4. I could very easily see a team like Georgia or Oklahoma getting up into that top 4, like into that 4th spot. If Michigan were to lose to Ohio State.
Yeah. If they were, they would definitely get in because Michigan would be a 2-loss team and they wouldn't have a Big Ten championship.
Oklahoma has to beat West Virginia too to.
Yeah, if Oklahoma can't win, then they're done too.
Honestly, if they don't beat West Virginia in the Big 12 championship game, or would they play in the Big 12? Or
so right now, here's the scenario. So Oklahoma. No, wait, hold on. If West Virginia beats Oklahoma. No, wait, no. Oklahoma, I believe, is in no matter what. Yeah, Oklahoma's in no matter what because.
So West Virginia would have to beat Oklahoma twice then.
Wait, check that. So if West Virginia beats Oklahoma, Oklahoma would be 7-2 in the conference. And so would West Virginia. And then if Texas also wins, which they should against Kansas, they would be 7-2. So everybody would be 7-2.
Oh wow!
West Virginia has to win, and Texas has to win. And in that case, I believe, West Virginia would definitely be in because we've beaten both Texas and Oklahoma. But then Texas, if you remember, beat Oklahoma. So I believe Texas would get in over Oklahoma. So it would be
West Virginia, Texas.
It would be West Virginia, Texas.
And that's a pretty good matchup if you think about it. I mean,
it's a good matchup, but the Big 12 is then knocked out of the college football playoff.
But they're still bowl eligible.
They're not going to put a 2-loss Big 12 champion in over. It's probably going to be a 1-loss Big 10 champion because I don't see Northwestern beating Ohio State or Michigan in the Big 10 championship game unless some miracle happens.
And I mean, you also look at Alabama, I mean, there's a pretty decent chance that they could lose to Auburn. I know, I mean, it's happened before.
Rivalry game, yeah.
I mean, it's happened before. You look at, what was it, 2013 when Chris Davis had that field goal return for a touchdown?
Yeah.
I mean,
that was the last time.
I mean, you look at that. I mean, in my opinion, if Alabama were to lose to both Auburn and Georgia, I can't see Alabama being in the top 4 after that because as you said,
if they lost 2 games in the year.
Yeah, but if they lose 1, I still think they're the number 2 in the playoff.
So you see Clemson jumping up above.
Oh yeah.
But if
they won't move down past the 2 spot if they lose to Auburn.
No,
I think that's.
I feel like if they lost, they would. I feel like if they lost and they didn't win the SEC, they'd do the same thing they did to them last year. They'd still get in, maybe at number 4 because they got in last year at the 4 spot.
I don't think they'll go in 4. I mean, I think Alabama's been one this whole time. They've crushed teams. They shut out LSU.
True, but that LSU I wouldn't call that really a shutout. If you think about 24-0, that's really, I mean,
I think it was 29, but
29.
LSU was 3 at the time.
right, but LSU was 3, correct.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
That's a good win.
right. Now, I want to talk a little about a UCF as they knocked off, well, first, you know what, let's talk a little bit about Ohio State. They got past Maryland 52-51 in overtime. Dwayne Haskins went 28 of 38 for 405 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. All 3 of Dwayne Haskins' touchdowns were rushing touchdowns. Ohio State will host that team up north in the regular season finale to determine who will play Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis on December 1st at 8 o'clock. I mean, you look at Ohio State, and they literally, by the skin of their teeth, got past Maryland. Because if Maryland would have gotten that 2-point conversion at the end of the game, at the end of overtime, I mean,
He was open.
Yeah,
right,
he
He was open.
I mean, the guy was wide open. How do you miss the guy?
Pass.
I mean, there was literally nobody around him. But I mean, hey, it was luck for Ohio State. They ended up getting a win, and you know, you look at the matchup, you know, with Ohio State and Michigan. You know, that matchup. It's almost like, you know, every year this, you know, you talk about this rivalry. You know, you look at the coaches. You know, Urban Meyer and Jim Harbaugh?
Yes.
I mean, those are two very good coaches. And I know that there's been rumors that Harbaugh, either John or Jim, may be in a discussion with the Browns for the head coaching job. That's what I've been hearing.
That's if I mean Jim Harbaugh's having a really good year this year at Michigan, so I
Right.
mean I can't see that
Or, yeah.
Michigan would do anything with him.
Right.
He was in the hot seat a little bit after they lost to Notre Dame,
Right.
but ever
They
since
haven't
they've been
lost.
hot. They haven't lost. They've been hot. They've been destroying teams. They obliterated Penn State. They obliterated Wisconsin.
Right.
They've been rolling over teams. So
Right.
I mean, Jim Harbaugh's job right now at Michigan's good, but I mean, I think he'll definitely get out on the hot seat again if he can't beat Ohio State
Right.
again.
I think as much as I would like to see Ohio State win,
Mhm.
I just think Michigan's defense is better than Ohio State's.
Oh yeah, I mean
Yeah.
with Ohio State being without Nick Bosa,
Yeah, that hurts him.
I mean, he
It
was-
definitely hurt. It's
I
definitely
mean-
a game changer.
It's a power move by Nick Bosa. To do
yeah,
that.
I mean, yeah, it's still, I mean,
That's
you
great,
talk
yeah.
about that. I mean, in my opinion, for him to do that, I feel like that was a good decision on his part, only because you know,
It obviously shows because Maryland absolutely destroyed our run defense.
right.
It shows it right there.
I mean,
And,
yeah,
I mean, if you're Maryland
Mhm.
at that 2-point conversion call at the end of the game, I mean, that makes sense if you're the coach of Maryland because you got lesser talent than Ohio State does.
right,
You don't want to go to a second overtime because at that later in the game, talent shows up.
right,
If you're a lesser talented team, that gets to you as you go later in the game. The guys get tired. So that was a smart decision. It was to win it all right there, but
They
they just
could've.
couldn't convert.
They could have. The guy was wide open. I mean,
right,
that guy's probably kicking himself.
right.
Quarterback,
missing
yeah.
him.
Oh, yeah, he was right there.
I mean, but I mean, and you also look at, you know, Dwayne Haskins, you know, throwing only 1 interception, and then all 3 of his touchdowns, they weren't passing, they were rushing touchdowns. I mean, everybody's saying, oh, this guy's got a good arm, you know, he does, but he clearly showed he has better legs, you know, against Maryland, it seemed.
That game, yeah.
Ohio
I mean-
State's home, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
They're hosting that team. I'm not
Yeah.
even gonna mention the name anymore. That team up north. I'm gonna keep saying that from now on. I'm not even gonna mention the name, but I mean, it should be a great game. I mean, is it Thanksgiving Day? Is it Thanksgiving weekend or
Yeah, it's this upcoming weekend. I'm trying to think what day it is.
That's-
I'm blanking out
it's the 25th, I believe?
because now I'm just so zoned into
day
West
after.
Virginia football. that, like usually I know everything about Ohio State football, but like now that we're at West Virginia, you know,
Yeah, you gotta zone
we're
into that
kind of
school.
just zoned into West Virginia here.
Right.
I will confirm the date for you.
Will Greer and David Stills has been at at West Virginia we call it the Juice Bar. It's where all the students go. They've been there the past couple times, and
Okay.
students take pictures with them and stuff. It's kind of cool.
Did you see him there?
I did not see them there, but
Okay.
I was there. I was downstairs there on the 5th floor. So yeah.
You know, since last year, in the
Mhm.
last like 2 seasons, Will Greer
Mhm.
and David Sills have combined for the most touchdowns in the FBS.
I did not know that. Okay.
David Sills is the most, and so does Greer. Both of them do. And a few weeks back, David Sills moved into second on the all-time West Virginia receiving touchdowns list. And he's only been playing, I think, for maybe 3 years. because I think his sophomore year he didn't play. He got hurt.
So he redshirted that year? Is that what it
Yeah,
was?
yeah, he got hurt or something like
Okay.
that sophomore year. But anyway, back to the Ohio State
Mhm.
Michigan game. That game is this Saturday at 12.
Okay, so that should be. I mean, it's the weekend of Thanksgiving, so it should be. I mean, it's gonna be a cold one. That's for sure. It'll be.
Definitely
I mean,
good environment as always.
Oh,
for
yeah.
Ohio State.
Oh man, and I wouldn't be surprised. And I know they do this every year. Ohio State does their annual Michigan Week, where they they cross off every M around campus. They they do it at every building, right?
Really, I mean,
They don't
I'm
even
not really.
they don't even type
I'm not
with
sure.
M usually when they tweet stuff. They put like an X instead of the
Really?
M.
Oh man, I've seen that before. They will put it like any building on campus that has the letter M in it. They will put a like a tape, in the shape of an X. But I mean, hopefully Ohio State can beat Michigan. I mean, that's what we want every year. I mean, Ohio State is going to be at home for this game, so it'll be going to probably be a sellout crowd. I couldn't imagine it being not a sellout crowd for a game like that.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about Notre Dame as well. I mean, Notre Dame they spanked Syracuse 36-3. And the game was at Yankee Stadium. Notre Dame will visit USC in the regular season finale next Saturday at 8:00. I mean, Notre Dame. They've gone between quarterbacks. Brandon Wimbush at the beginning of the year.
Yep.
Ian Book. Middle of the season. He played in the game against Syracuse, and I mean, Notre Dame looks like they're in the playoff. They should be. I mean, even
They're
though
starting to hit their stride, and especially if they win against USC.
Mhm.
I do not see how the committee would not put him in because they're undefeated. They beat Michigan.
right.
And again, if Michigan wins the Big Ten, I mean, if you're Notre Dame, you've beaten a Big Ten champion, a one-loss Big Ten champion. So,
Right.
and they usually put undefeated teams in, except for USC. I know we're gonna get to them later, but
Right.
yeah, they've been rolling of late. But
I mean, but also you think about Notre Dame, they do not have a conference championship game. They do not play, so that's the one
Yeah.
downside for them is that they have to hope
They don't.
that the teams either probably in front of them have a slip up or two, or the teams behind them have a slip up, because they don't play that extra game, they don't play that conference championship game. So that's one disadvantage for Notre Dame. I think
I feel like that could also help them if they don't have the conference championship game because they don't have to play somebody in a championship game potentially lose.
Right.
They could stay undefeated, that unblemished record.
right.
Well,
I still see them getting in though.
I think one of the top 3 teams will lose undoubtedly.
Oh, yeah.
It's bound.
I mean, yeah, that's bound. I mean, I feel like Alabama's bound to lose at some point this year. I mean,
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, it's shown
Yeah.
before. I mean, they've slipped up, against Auburn in 2013. They slipped up against Clemson in the national championship game. But the one thing I want to talk about is everybody's been saying they should. I think it's either 5 or 6 teams add a couple teams into the playoff. Instead of 4 teams, go to like 6 or 8. I want to get your opinion on your guys' opinion on that. Do you see them doing something like that, going from a 4-team playoff to let's say a 6-team or an 8-team playoff?
I think an 8 or 10. Well, the first top 2 seeds would get a bye then, but I think an 8 would be cooler to expand it out.
Right. Give more teams chances.
I don't see him doing it though.
But I feel like that's a lot of football games.
Right, but they could always start. That was it. Christmas, December. Was it like the week
Yeah.
after all the conference championship games? You play
I think
those playing games.
I think they don't do it to avoid a blowout. They don't want to see games that are blowouts in a playoff game.
Mhm.
So, for example, like some years you could have, say, a Big 12 champion
Mhm.
that has 3 losses. If you have a bad year in a certain conference,
Right.
they don't want to have these Power 5 conferences that may have a down year.
Mhm.
Put these teams into a 8-team playoff and then just see an absolute obliteration on the football field by
True.
another team.
Right.
Are you
I
saying
mean-
if you win your...
If-
If you
I
win
mean,
your...
because usually the debate every year is what Power 5 conference are we going to have to knock out of the college football playoff this year? Because there's 4 spots and there's
Yeah.
5 power conferences. There's the Pac-12,
Right.
there's the ACC,
Mhm.
SEC, Big 10, and Big 12.
Right.
And every year, one of those conference champions has to be eliminated based on, I guess, how good the conference is that year,
Right.
how strong of a schedule that winner plays,
Right.
and or you knock out two of the power conferences like they did last year.
Right.
They knocked out the Big Ten
Right.
because Alabama got put in
Right.
instead.
Right. And also, I mean, you look at, I'm going to keep saying this over and over again. You look at UCF. I mean, they knocked off Cincinnati on Saturday night, 38-13. Now, do you see UCF in the top 10? I know we looked at the coaches poll, before the show, before the show, but do you see them getting getting up there, in the top 10 in the playoff, considering West Virginia lost?
Yeah, they're definitely going to be in the top 10 now that West Virginia lost.
Because that spot's open.
Because that
now.
spot's vacant, and
Right.
Ohio State's probably going to move up to 9. I don't think they're going to move anybody in the top 10 like they did They didn't move anybody after last week's game.
No.
The top 10 stayed exactly the same, but now that
Right.
West Virginia lost,
Mhm.
UCF is going to move up to 10. Ohio State's going to be 9.
Right.
And maybe UCF can move up from there, but they should be in the top 10. I mean, they haven't lost in 20-some games. It's like 22, 23 games
23
now.
straight. Yeah, they're like the Connecticut Huskies of college football. I mean,
They should get some consideration,
Right. I mean-
I think. If they, depending on what they do in their championship game, if they absolutely blow out, I don't even know who they would face. It'd either be UCF or USF, excuse me, and Cincinnati
Right.
or Cincinnati. If they absolutely blow them out the championship game.
I don't think they'll.
I mean, I still think the college football playoff is not gonna.
I mean, if you did expand it to 8 teams, like we said,
Mhm.
I mean, I think that would be interesting. I think, from last week's rankings.
Right.
I mean, the first game would be Washington State versus Alabama, and I would watch that.
Oh yeah, I mean
I think that'd be cool. And then
yeah,
you got
I mean, that would be
LSU, Clemson, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Georgia, Michigan for the playoff.
those would be some great. I mean, you look at those matchups. I mean, that'd be something. People would watch those games for sure. I mean, it wouldn't.
Makes money.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's all that. These television, these TV brands want is just money. I mean, you talk about UCF being the undisputed national champs last year, but not winning the college football playoff. I still like how they did that. I was seeing that, but I mean, the only thing that I could see them not being in the playoff or in the top 10 is because their defense hasn't been great because of losing who was it, Shaquem Griffin.
Are you talking about UCF's defense?
Yeah, because
okay.
you're losing Shaquem Griffin to the NFL draft, and I mean, kudos to him. I mean, you talk about him with only having one hand. I mean,
Yeah.
he's in my opinion,
Definitely an inspiration for other people.
definitely an inspiration, and he had to make Odell Beckham catches during some games. I mean, no offense to his condition, but hey, he had to make some one-handed catches, and I mean, he's playing I haven't seen him much with Seattle, but I mean, kudos to him. I mean, he's definitely, as you said, an inspiration to everybody, and I mean, just to see the way he played with UCF, just playing so well, and getting through. I mean, look at even how I'll bring up another example. Jason Pierre-Paul losing, what did he lose his finger and was it a fireworks accident or something?
Yeah.
And he had to wear a glove. Think about him; he's still a premier linebacker in the NFL, and I mean, nothing will stand in front of guys if they put their minds to it. That's the clear statement.
I just don't I mean, UCF. I think they'll make top 10, but
Right.
their schedule. I mean, right now in the championship,
Mm-hmm.
they'd be facing Houston,
Mm-hmm.
and they're 5-2 in conference, and they're not even ranked. And then you look at other teams, who are facing.
Right, the American has two.
I mean, you look at the
divisions.
teams in the American, you can just kind of tell the toughness. I mean, Temple is second behind UCF, and
Right.
I'm so used to the Big 12 now because
Right.
I forget that there's 2 divisions for some of these for all other conferences.
Right.
Because if you didn't know this, the Big 12 is the only conference where every team plays everybody in the conference. So West Virginia plays every Big 12 team, and the 2 people in the Big 12 championship are the top 2 teams. It's not the top team from each division.
Right.
So like the Big 10 championship game, for example, it's not going to be the 2 best teams. It's going to be the
divi-
winner of Ohio State, Michigan, so the
Right.
best team in that division. Then Northwestern is definitely not the second best team in the Big Ten.
No, not by any.
So that's why
Right.
I like how the Big 12 does it, because you take the two best teams
Right.
in the Big 12 and they play against each other in
Right.
the championship game, which
I
makes
mean-
it better.
It'll go towards the playoff if Oklahoma, or no, it won't. Never mind.
That's what I think.
Or-
That's what I think. I know what you were about to say,
If
but I think
Oklahoma wins,
Mm-hmm.
and then they'd face
who would Oklahoma face?
Texas. No, they face West Virginia.
So they have to beat West Virginia twice.
Well,
They face
if-
Texas. They
If,
face
if
Texas.
Oklahoma, if Oklahoma would
Wins.
beat us, and then if
And then-
if Texas would lose, though, we would still be
Yeah,
facing
but Texas-
Oklahoma.
but that would still be cool because then Oklahoma still has a chance
Right.
at the playoff, and then Texas isn't a bad team by any
Right.
means. They
So
almost
then
beat
here-
us.
Here's the problem with Ohio State, Michigan. Well, I mean, I think it's more so Ohio State's problem,
Okay.
because Ohio State's on the outside looking in. If Ohio State
Uh-huh.
beats Michigan, goes to the Big Ten championship game,
Mm-hmm.
and they beat Northwestern,
Mm-hmm.
I think that
Mm-hmm.
that could hurt them, because they're playing Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game. They're playing a team that's not.
And if,
as
it's
good-
a close game,
If it's a close game, that would definitely hurt them, because
Right.
they're playing in a championship game against a team that's not as good.
Right.
It definitely knocks a little bit off of them,
but they would have
because their
to.
win isn't as
They'd
big.
have to play them if they want to make it into the.
Right.
Yeah,
I'll
they
say
have to play
playoff.
them. But
Right.
what I'm saying is
It would hurt them.
if the format was similar to a Big 12,
Uh-huh.
they'd
They
be playing
face
a better
Michigan
team.
twice.
Yeah, they'd
They'd
be
be
playing a
playing-
better team.
that'd be very cool to
That,
see.
that
I
would
mean-
and that would give them more validity.
Right.
Maybe the college football playoff would look at them better and saying, "Wow, this team played two really good.
And they-
Played a really good team twice and beat them twice."
And they were both, and it's a rivalry game, so it's like
Yeah.
you have to look at those. But also, you think about Northwestern. Do you see if Ohio State were to beat Michigan, do you see Michigan dropping out of that that four spot? Because
Yeah.
Ohio State
they're
to
right
Michigan?
they're right that fourth
Oh, yeah.
spot.
100%.
I feel like it would
And
either
then-
be if West Virginia were to beat Oklahoma twice, the committee would definitely see that and say, okay, maybe we should. I could see.
we definitely get back in the top 10.
Right.
We'd probably be one of like the first out. We may be like a. We may be like a. I don't think we get to 5 or 6. We may be like a 7.
I think the
I would say 5.
the NC State game that got canceled
That hurt
because of the
us.
hurricane.
Right.
So we didn't we were gonna pay them to come down and play us
at West Virginia.
at West Virginia, but they declined it, and so we totally missed out on that game.
They said, in my opinion,
That hurt us. That would have been a good win.
Right. I'll say they
if
should.
we go to win that game.
No, you talk about games being canceled. You talk about that game. If it's a game, in my opinion, with the NCAA, what they should look at is if it's a game that is okay, may be canceled, because of Mother Nature. They should look at a neutral site, maybe even AT&T Stadium. If say the Cowboys aren't
Yeah.
playing at home that week, you go to
They tried looking at a couple of neutral sites, I know, but I just don't understand why I couldn't find one. There were
There's a
definitely
lot of football
there could have
sites out there.
there could
Right.
have definitely been more neutral sites that nobody was playing at.
But here's the thing: is to think about the distance for both schools. Both schools would have to travel the same distance if they were to play in Texas at AT&T Stadium. It wouldn't be like with TCU where they played AT&T Stadium and it's like a home game for them against, let's say, but it's supposed to be like a neutral site game. It's, in my opinion, they should look at that game and say, okay, the game was canceled, but they should still try to play it before the end of this year. I know they probably can't because of
Oh, yeah, you can't
scheduling,
now,
but
yeah.
if they were to look at it, when the game was canceled, they should have thought, okay, can we play it, the week after the regular season finale, could they look at that and say, okay, we can play it, at this point right here, let's say they'll play it in Charlotte, neutral site and play the game, because that, as you said, it really hurt West Virginia, because if West Virginia were to have beat NC State, they would have been in the top 5, to be honest with you.
yeah.
They would have been that, as you put it, Jimmy, the last, one of the first teams out, at number 5.
I think right now, like, if hypothetically it won't happen, but if we did play them, it wouldn't help us. Even if we beat them, even if we crush them, I don't think it would help us. I think at the time, if we would have faced them, beat them,
Mm-hmm.
we would have had a higher ranking
Right.
at the time. Maybe would have done something differently.
Right.
But
And you also think about Jimmy, you made a good point. The Big 12, it's not like the Big 10 where there's 2 different divisions. It's the Big 12 is one division. That's it. That's the one thing I wish the Big Ten would go to is something like that. What you said, where it's just one
Yeah.
division, and because in my opinion, it would be Ohio State and Michigan in the Big Ten championship game. I mean, because you look at Northwestern, they're not great at all. I mean, you think about it.
I think they're ranked. They're just not.
I don't think they're right.
They're just not a very great ranked team. They've won some decent games this year, but when you look at their team overall, they're just a far less.
Right. I mean, you look at
They're
them.
far lesser than other
Yeah.
teams.
They're 22.
Yeah, and that's in the coach poll. In the AP top 25, they're actually 20th. So I mean, they're not. I mean, that's still. I mean, you think about that. I mean, and you also look at these one-loss teams. You look at Georgia, Michigan, Oklahoma, Washington State. In my opinion, if UCF were to win, if they were to beat USF next week and win the conference, they should surpass Washington State, Oklahoma, and Georgia. Because look at, so in the AP poll, UCF's ranked 8th, and they're one of 4 or one of 3 undefeated teams, or one of 4 undefeated teams. But then you look at who's above them; they're all one-loss teams. In my opinion, that does not make sense, because if you have a one-loss team, and I mean if worse comes to worse, they have a one-loss team or 2-loss team in the college football playoff, that doesn't show that the college football playoff is, they should be looking at, okay, teams that are undefeated, have not lost a game. I mean, yeah, they could have a slip up in the beginning of the year. Okay, 1 loss in my opinion should be that limit
Okay, well,
to get in.
if they make it in, let's say, it would 100% be the 4. So let's say they beat Washington State, correct? They're facing them.
Correct.
They jump ahead of them. Say West Virginia beats Oklahoma
Right.
twice.
Right.
Or even just once, because then UCF would bump ahead them.
Right.
Ohio State beats Michigan. And then
Right.
who's Georgia? Georgia would face.
They face Alabama in the SEC championship
So
game.
you would need, I think UCF needs all those teams.
Right.
Obviously, I think then they'll make it into the top 4. But
Right.
if that doesn't happen, I think
They need a lot of help.
Michigan is going to, I mean, if Michigan wins, then they're going to stay there, obviously.
Right.
So they need all those
Now-
teams. I mean, it's possible.
Right.
I mean, you said Alabama can 100% beat Georgia.
That's
Yeah.
up in the air in my opinion.
Ohio State can beat Michigan.
Yes.
West Virginia.
Can beat Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I mean-
so UCF has a chance, but like
right.
it's not.
Right. Now
It's
they
not
would,
up to
in my opinion, they would need both. They would need Alabama to lose twice. They would need Alabama to lose to Auburn in the Iron Bowl and to Georgia in the SEC championship game. If
Well-
UCF or West Virginia have any chance of getting in to the playoff,
Just make it easier. Just have Alabama beat Georgia. Or I mean, I don't think that's as realistic for Alabama to lose 2 games.
I mean, it could happen. I mean,
I mean, yeah, but
It could happen, but I think Alabama would still be ranked ahead of West Virginia,
that
even
too.
if Alabama lost 2 games.
'Cause we
Even
lost
still
2
the
games.
same amount. We've lost 2 games.
And
also.
we have a game less.
Yeah.
right. But I mean, it's, you look at some of the, you look at Notre Dame and even Clemson. I mean, those teams have played so well. I mean, you look at what Clemson did to Louisville. What was it, 77-16? I mean, it was like in my opinion, you look at Clemson's schedule. They're in a great conference. Don't get me wrong. The ACC is a great conference, but
all right.
But I mean, it's
Not that great.
Not that great.
I honestly think Clemson has the easiest schedule probably in college football. Like
You-
as a Power 5 team.
as a Power 5. I would say yeah, but I mean,
They honestly play nobody.
honestly, you look at Louisville, Pittsburgh. I mean, the only time Louisville was actually good, like they actually had a great team, was when Lamar Jackson was there last year. That was like they were like a 1-year wonder, if you will. I mean,
I like their helmets.
yeah, I mean, uniforms are great, but if you can't, as the saying goes, if you can't produce on the field, the uniform you're wearing, I mean, it's a great. I mean, they're great uniforms, but if you can't produce on the field, well, it's that.
Yeah.
It's that saying.
They
But
look good.
Clemson has faced 2 ranked teams this year.
okay,
And I don't even know if any of those. Let me see if any of those teams are still ranked.
I'll say because
Wait, no, 3. Hold on.
Pittsburgh's number 24.
Yeah, you see Pitt's in the top 25.
Oh yeah, because Syracuse wasn't ranked at the time. So they played Syracuse they weren't ranked at the time, but when they beat them, they barely beat them. Then Syracuse ended up moving up.
Right.
They played NC State.
Mm-hmm.
They played Boston College. Now, is Boston College and NC State ranked anymore?
No.
You're sure about that?
Yeah, I'm looking at the rankings right here. They're not in the AP poll or the coaches poll. They're not in either one.
So they must have lost both of them then. Oh, yeah. NC State, yeah, they lost. NC State lost, I believe, Wake Forest. Wake Forest is nothing.
Right.
And what was the other team I just said? Boston College.
Boston College,
Yeah.
right. And
So, I
neither one of
mean,
those
the only
teams-
team that
Clemson.
Clemson,
Mhm.
the only team that Clemson played that's still ranked is Syracuse.
Right.
So the ACC is just so weak. They
Right.
play nobody.
Right.
They played Duke last week. Duke is not a good
I mean,
football
Duke-
school.
I mean, Duke had a lead, but-
Clemson's fallen off since Lamar Jackson left. Florida State has been nothing ever since like the Jameis Winston days.
Right. with
And
Florida.
now that Jimbo Fisher left,
They're nothing.
they're going way down.
Right.
Wake Forest, not good either.
Right.
Neither is Georgia Tech.
Right.
And in their non-conference games
Mhm.
was Georgia Southern,
Mm-hmm.
Furman,
Mm-hmm.
and Texas A&M. Texas A&M isn't ranked. They're not bad,
Yeah.
but
I'll say
they're not good either. They're not a good SEC team.
Right, I'll say-
They're really not.
I'll say they did have what was it, 2 years that Johnny Manziel was there? Or was it 1 year that at Texas A&M?
He was there for a few years.
I'll
But
say, but he had his,
now that Jimbo Fisher's there, now they should get better, but
right,
they're not that great
right.
this year.
I mean, it all goes back to, you look at Notre Dame, how Notre Dame beat Pittsburgh and how UCF beat Pittsburgh. I'm going to keep going back to this. You look at UCF, they beat Pittsburgh. They beat them, it was over. The game, it wasn't like it was the last second play or anything. But then you look at how Notre Dame beat Pittsburgh. They beat them, what was it, 19-14? I mean, it wasn't like, you look at how UCF beat Pittsburgh. It was like, what was it, 48-16? It was a large margin.
45-14.
45-14, but like you should still look at that. The committee should still say, wait a minute. You look at how these schools beat, one team.
Yeah, but Notre Dame beat Michigan, and I'm gonna take a school that can beat Michigan than beat a team by less points than UCF. So but UCF's facing Washington, so that's a big game for them,
Right,
obviously.
right.
A top, Washington. I like Washington though.
Right.
So I like what's their
Wait, UCF plays who?
what's their quarterback's name? It starts with an M.
Oh my God.
He's got the mustache.
Okay. Wait.
UCF plays USF
Yeah, next week. Yeah.
next week.
Yeah, they don't play Washington.
And then they play whoever comes out of the other side of the American Conference.
Right, I was like, then
which,
the
again,
Americans-
is Houston.
I say, isn't the American like the old Big East, or is it the new Big East?
Minshew.
I think they took a couple people from the old Big East. Like Cincinnati used to be in the Big East.
Right.
UConn was in the Big East. I believe USF was also in the Big East.
Right. And then UCF came
And
over.
they've added some teams
Right.
also. Like they've added there's East. I didn't even know Eastern Carolina was in this division.
Yeah, they came
in
over
this
from
conference.
Conference
Oh,
USA.
Navy's also in the American.
Yeah, so I feel like Notre Dame, if Notre Dame has any shot of getting into the playoff, they need a team to lose either 2 games, including a conference championship game, or they just need them to lose 1 game. So they would need, Clemson to lose, which I don't know who they would play in their conference championship game, but who knows what they'll do. But it's you look at Notre Dame. They don't have a conference championship game to play. I feel like that's a benefit, or that's an advantage only because they've got all those days of rest. Before, if they make it to the playoff, they have that time to just regroup and get ready for whoever they're going to be facing come what was it, New Year's Eve? The playoff will be played, like the first 2 semifinal games. But it should be a great weekend. Should be hopefully Ohio State beats Michigan, hopefully Notre Dame beats USC, and hopefully West Virginia beats Oklahoma. Now I want to get to some local spotlight as the Chicago Bears and Minnesota Vikings played last night on Sunday Night Football. The Bears beat the Vikings 25-20. Bears quarterback Mitch Trubisky went 20 of 31 for 165 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. You look at Mitch Trubisky. he's shown he could be an MVP candidate. I know it's late in the year,
He's
but
having a good year, yeah. But
I mean,
It's
yeah,
cool. It's cool to
MVP.
see just because he's from Mentor.
right.
So,
I mean,
like,
he played here, and I mean, who would have thought? Played at Mentor, went to North Carolina, and now is this up and coming NFL star. I mean, I could see him personally. I could see him in MVP conversation next year, not this year. I could see Patrick Mahomes locking up the MVP this
think
year.
him or Drew Brees.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, but I mean, you look at how Trubisky. I mean, the Bears were not that great, and then Trubisky comes in and he just, I mean,
Trubisky's definitely been a game changer for them, but I think it's really also been Khalil Mack.
oh, definitely the signing of
their
Khalil Mack
their defense just went from
nothing to something.
their defense is great
I mean-
now because of Khalil Mack literally bulldozing
Right.
guys, and
Right.
he's probably leading the league in sacks.
I'd say you even look at
He is just such a game changer, and that's why Chicago is now in first place
right.
in the.
Was it the NFC North? I
Yep,
think.
and I think they took over the Vikings last night.
Yep. But I mean, you also think about you look at what the Eagles. They really haven't shown that they're the defending Super Bowl champs. Losing to
No.
New Orleans.
No.
What was it? 45-7.
Yeah, it was bad.
It was a blowout. I mean,
Played awful.
yeah, it wasn't something that I did not see that coming personally. I didn't see. I mean, in my opinion, Philadelphia. I mean, they are the defending Super Bowl champs, but they haven't been showing it personally.
No.
I mean, to lose to the Saints,
What
by that
about-
much.
What about Pittsburgh?
I mean, they got past Jacksonville, but that was
That was an ugly win, but a hard fought. I mean, they were down. What, 19-0? They were down.
They were
'Cause
down, yeah.
How many
It was,
interceptions?
it was 16-6. I remember looking
How many
at one point.
interceptions did Roethlisberger had? He had like.
he had like 2 or 3, or something like that. But yeah, I mean, he didn't have a great day at all.
But they came back and won it, and he had that rushing TD at the end of it.
Right. I mean, you see all these teams. They're good in the beginning of the end, and the end of the towards the end of the year, they're like just like starting to fade out. And you see these other teams coming up and just surprising everybody. They're like I call the Bears like a dark horse, because the beginning of the year they weren't the best, and then once Trubisky came in and was playing very well, they just started to show these other teams like, hey, we're not some joke. We're not like no offense, I'm a Browns fan, but we're not the. I know the Bears fans are probably saying this. We're not the Cleveland Browns at that time, when they weren't good, and they're starting to come up. They're like, we're not the Cleveland Browns because. I mean, you also think about Trubisky playing. Is this his rookie year or is this his second year? Second year. I mean,
He's been in the league for more than 1 year.
right. And I mean, you think about how he's played. With the receiving core that he has, with the running game that he has. I mean, he's shown.
They got Tariq Cohen and Jordan Howard.
Yeah, I
Two
mean,
really
it's-
good running backs right,
right.
there.
I mean, then you add,
And then Tariq Cohen's a dual threat. He could run the ball and receive.
right.
He's almost like a miniature version of Alvin Kamara in a way.
Oh,
That's what I
definitely.
see Tariq Cohen as.
Definitely.
I could really throw a defense
Right.
off guard if you have the rear running back go out and catch a
Right.
few passes.
I mean, it's nice to see a local star making. I mean, I know it'd be kind of nice to see him in a Browns uniform. Hopefully, the Browns can cook up something to get Trubisky over. The Browns can give something
We
to.
got Baker now.
Oh, true. They got to
Choose
do.
Baker.
I say we do. I mean,
I am in Baker we trust. I am sticking my guns down, and I'm saying Baker Mayfield is our quarterback, and it's just upsetting that we don't get to see football. We didn't get to see any Browns football this weekend.
True, but hey, it was nice to see what they did to Atlanta last week. I mean,
Yeah.
28-16. I actually had the pleasure of being at the game, so it was cool to see how the fan, being at the game, seeing the fans just so energized throughout the game. Like the fans were never. I mean, they were at points.
The last 2 years.
Last 2 years, I mean, but this game, I mean, the fans were always in the game. There was some, there were people who were upset at points because of penalties being called or penalties that weren't called, but the lower bowl was filled, which was, I mean,
Yeah.
it was, but, I mean, the fans were just, I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean,
I can't imagine what the city would be like if. I mean, this year it's
Mhm.
kind of, they didn't have the best start to the season, obviously.
right.
It
I mean,
could have been way better.
Yeah,
I'll
and
say,
it,
yeah.
it should have been way
Could've.
better.
Yeah.
It
We
should have
we
been.
should have 2 more wins right now. 2 more wins.
mhm.
Take off 2 of those losses because you should have definitely beat. Or no, 3 actually.
The Pittsburgh tie.
Or no, yeah, take off the tie. So you should
Right.
have 3 more wins.
Right.
2 less losses and take away that tie because you have 6 takeaways against Pittsburgh. You still can't beat them.
Most of our games were close. I mean, the second Pittsburgh
Same.
game wasn't good.
You know, and even the game when
Legit.
the homecoming for Kareem Hunt and Travis Kelce, that game wasn't close at all. But
No, I didn't expect that to be close. That's why I kind of expected the Falcons to kind of roll over us because
the Chiefs?
against the Falcons, like because the Chiefs, because we played in we had 2 straight weeks, I believe. We had Chiefs and then Steelers. We had 2 really good offenses,
right.
and I was like, man, we're facing the Falcons this week that has Matt Ryan,
Julio
Julio
Jones.
Jones, really good offense there, and I was like, man, the Browns couldn't handle
Those guys and
Big Ben. They couldn't handle Mahomes and the Chiefs. I was like, man, the Falcons also have a really good offense.
right.
So I'm playing Matt Ryan in my fantasy team, and I'm like, oh man, Matt Ryan's gonna be getting me all these points this week. And I was surprised to look at my phone
Yeah.
at one point because I didn't watch the Browns game last week because I was unable to. But
Gotcha.
when I looked at my phone, I was like, oh my gosh, we're actually beating the Falcons.
Right, and we actually had a first quarter touchdown for the first time.
for the first time in how long? It's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
It was like the first time since like probably 2015, I think it was,
Yeah,
or
something like
that.
But I mean, you look at Baker. I mean, he's played so well. He's
3 touchdowns for the first time
Yeah.
in his career.
I mean, in my opinion, everybody's saying, "Oh, Baker, he's our savior." If the Browns win the rest of their games this year, if they, win out, there's going to be those talks of he is our savior. He is the guy that we, he's, he is the guy. And I mean, the funny thing was that it was when we were at the game, and you look, I forgot what end it was. It was not near. It was the other end, but not. It was the other end that was not the dog pound. And looked at this and I see these. It was either 2 older ladies. They were wearing Baker outfits. They the Baker hat, and I was like, I mean, it was the funniest. I mean, you see how the city of Cleveland is rallied around Baker. I mean, he has bad games and he has good games, and it's nice to see. Even with LeBron not here, it almost seems like Baker was. It almost seems like Baker's from Northeast Ohio, and he's like the replacement for LeBron, which is nice to see.
So here are the Browns' upcoming games.
Okay.
We got the Bengals
Mm-hmm.
this Sunday, I should say.
Yeah.
Followed by the Texans, Panthers, Broncos, Bengals again,
Mm-hmm.
and then Ravens.
I could see us beating the Bengals twice for
could-
sure. I mean,
I
that's
could maybe beat the Bengals. I could see us winning.
three out of those. Well, how many?
I
games
would
is that?
hope we could at least win 2 of those.
I can't see us beating Carolina because of Cam Newton, Christian McCaffrey, Greg Olsen, those 3 guys. If the Browns can't contain those 3 guys, you can't beat the Carolina Panthers. I mean,
No.
you look at McCaffrey, how good he's been, running the ball.
McCaffrey has had a great year.
I mean, even Cam Newton, he looks like he's a a first-year guy, or second-year guy. He doesn't. How long has he been? I don't even know
He's
how long.
been like for many years.
Many
now.
years, but I mean,
many.
it almost seems like he's that younger. He's like his younger self. Just has that explosiveness to him. But you even look at Greg Olsen; he's had those injury troubles, throughout the year, and he's come back and he's, shown teams, hey, I can play through injuries. There's no problem in that.
So yeah, the Browns could possibly win 2 of those games.
We're not
I
the
would
worst.
hope.
We're not the worst team this year. The Raiders.
And
that's the Raiders just got.
They beat.
Gruden.
They beat.
No, they got Gruden, right? As their head coach.
John Gruden. Yeah.
100. What was it? 10 years for 100. Was it 100 mil?
Yeah, 100 mil. Yeah, something like that. But yeah, I mean, they just got their second win yesterday against the Cardinals. I mean,
That's crazy.
Hey, we're not the worst team, but you know what? We're the worst team in our division. Or in our division.
Yeah, because our division's very good. It's it's hard to
Any
break out of it. We could though.
Any other division
Mhm.
except for the NFC North,
Mm-hmm.
we would either be tied or we'd be like one above. We'd be in last place. Which is
Right.
kind of cool to see.
Now, I want to talk a transition. I want to talk a little bit about some college basketball. I know I didn't mention it before the show, but let's talk a little West Virginia college basketball. I know you guys have been.
Right.
It's not good.
Oh man, that's. I say I was watching some of the games and I was.
We went to the first home opener against Buffalo, who was I think ranked 99th at the time.
Yeesh.
And I mean, I know they had the big upset versus Arizona last year.
Did Buffalo beat you guys? Did Buffalo beat West Virginia?
In overtime, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, we had. I mean, last game. or 2 games ago, they had 22 turnover. Like they just turn over the ball so much.
So Bob Huggins isn't. Do you see him leaving? Do you see Bob Huggins, getting fired? Mid-season.
No.
No, Bob Huggins is our
Huggins
man. He's here to stay. It's just our team.
It's not. I mean, in a sense, I guess you could say it's his fault, but in another sense, the players are just playing awful. Like
I just don't think
it's not.
they don't have.
It's not talent. Like they're talented. They're just not playing
up to standard.
There's no chemistry.
Okay.
There's no chemistry, and there's a lack of leadership. There's a lack of senior leadership because we lost Javon Carter.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
That was our big guy last year who would lead the way for these younger players. And now I don't even know how many seniors we have. I don't think we have many.
So you're almost like
I'm not gonna say we're inexperienced. We just haven't. Like Joe said, we don't have as much chemistry right now. We're turning the ball over way too much.
So you guys are like the Cleveland Cavaliers, basically.
No, I mean we should be making our opponent turn the ball over way more because we have the press, and the press I just hasn't.
Not really doing it.
It hasn't worked as well as it has in the past. Probably because we have some smaller guards now.
Right.
I mean, our main point guard is Beetle Bolden. He's great.
He's crazy.
He's very explosive.
He can dunk.
But he is
short.
only like 6'1". And then Chase Harler is like 6'2", 6'3". I mean, it's good height, but like they're just not good.
You can
press.
just tell that something isn't clicking just by
right
watching
now.
them.
We're hoping it turns around because we also lost to Western Kentucky in the Myrtle Beach Invitational. Another upset there. We turned the ball over again way too much.
I mean, it's early in the season.
It is early in the season.
Right.
But still, looking at these games with all these turnovers, that's...
Right. I mean, you can't do that in the NCAA. You can't do that if you want to make the NCAA tournament.
You're going to lose if you turn over the ball 20-plus times.
Right.
Against any team.
Because we went into this season ranked 13th in the nation, and then we dropped out right after we lost to Buffalo.
And Buffalo, I think, moved in.
Yeah, Buffalo moved into 25. Yeah, they did, and we're ranked third in the Big 12 coming into the season. Also,
one guy. How many points did that one guy have in Buffalo? He had like all their points.
He had. Yeah, I honestly am
40s.
drawing a blank on his name, but he scored 43 points. He had 12 rebounds, double. Torched us from 3. He hit a game-tying 3 with, I believe, 15 seconds left, and then West Virginia tried to go down, get score for the win at the buzzer, and we just took an awful shot at the end of the game.
All we took was 3. If you looked at our shot chart, you'd probably see more paint than you saw than the 3-point line. All our shots were behind the 3-point line, all of them.
It's just
contested threes too.
Our problem this year is we're not getting the ball in the paint. We're not penetrating and kicking. We're just trying to create our own shot and do like a fadeaway step back, and it's just really tough shots. They're not making extra passes to get guys open.
Right.
They're not feeding the ball in the post to Sags Kanate, who's our big center in the middle.
He's not even really going to the post. I mean, he can shoot the deep ball, but
he should be the post more.
He can shoot the deep ball, but he's also the biggest guy on our team. So like, it's nice that he can spread out the floor, but at the same time, when you have no, offense in the paint, like that's not gonna
go well.
No.
But I mean, as you said, it's early in the year that you don't know what they're gonna do. I mean, for all we know, they could get into the NCAA tournament, winning the conference very easily. Because don't all the teams go to the conference tournament? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Or for Big 12.
Yeah, for the Big 12, yes.
Yeah, oh yeah. All your conference tournaments, all the teams make it.
Right.
And then for some of the conferences, the only way you can make the NCAA tournament is
getting that automatic bid. Which I
but
feel like
if West Virginia wants to make the tournament, they're either going to have to win their conference, or if they win like 20 games, they'll get in, because any team really wins 20 games in a Power 5 conference makes the tournament.
Right. And I feel like that's what the College Football Playoff Committee should look at, is automatic bids, implementing that, conference champions. I know it's only 4 teams, but look at who wins the, conference champions should get that automatic bid into the College Football Playoff. I know it's only 4 teams, but still. I feel like the committee should look at that and say, okay, what teams have won their conference against a good opponent? I mean,
instead of doing that, I like top 8. Like, I don't think that's as.
You think going to an 8-team playoff would be better?
No, you were saying if whichever team wins there.
Yeah, like if whatever teams win their conference, I could see them debating based on those couple
I
schools.
thought you were saying like if they win their conference. So like if Alabama,
Yeah.
who's
They're
no,
facing
if Northwestern beats
Ohio State.
Ohio State or Michigan, whoever
Mhm.
wins that game, then
Mhm.
Northwestern would be in the playoff instead. That would be.
No, I'm saying so they say Alabama beats Georgia, Clemson wins the ACC, Notre Dame gets in because of them beating Michigan earlier in the year.
That's probably why they shouldn't have automatic bids. Because, for example, if Northwestern were to beat somehow by a miracle, if they were to beat Ohio State or Michigan,
Mhm.
if there was an automatic bid,
Mhm.
you'd have Northwestern get in, and
And that would
they
be a
definitely
blowout.
should not get in.
Right. I mean that is pretty true. I mean you do make a good point with that, but I mean you never know. I mean that's the one thing I do love about the playoff is that there's every week they bring out the top 25 and you're like you don't know who the top 4 are going to be based on last week's performances. I mean if in my opinion if Auburn beats Alabama, but Alabama wins the SEC, they're in with one loss because it's Alabama. They've been. I don't think I've seen any number since the college football playoff. I don't think I've seen any team number 1 since the college football playoff came into play. I've not seen any team but Alabama at the number 1 spot, which kind of it almost reminds me of the Golden State Warriors, always being that number 1 team, and even Kansas, in college basketball, having them being the number 1 team almost every year at the beginning of the year. It's like, can't you put another team up there at the beginning of the year? I get Alabama has a great recruiting, they're great at recruiting and all that, but it's like, put another team up there besides Alabama.
Well, they're the best team, and that's how it goes. And
Personally, I don't think they're the best team. Personally, I see either Ohio State or Notre Dame or Clemson. Those 3. One of those 3 teams could be the number 1 team. I don't see Alabama being the number 1 team.
I just think the way Alabama has been. I mean, even though the Citadel.
Mm-hmm.
If you consider Alabama's toughest game
Mm-hmm.
was against the Citadel, and the only thing that was tough about it was the fact that they went into halftime tied.
Yep.
I think that's pretty crazy. Then they whooped them. They smoked all the teams they faced,
Right.
LSU included. So
Right.
I just think they're the best in the nation.
Right. But you also look at Clemson and how good they've played as well. Who was their quarterback before? Kelly Bryant, I think it was, and then he dropped out of school or he left school. And,
Yeah, because they're gonna put the freshman in over him.
Right. And with Trevor Lawrence, he's showed up considerably. It's hard. In my opinion, it's probably very hard for him to fill those shoes. Kelly Bryant, how good he was, and but I think come playoff time, I'm going to put my prediction out right now. I know we're getting close to that time of the playoff and the committee. I'm going to put my top 4 out right now. If Alabama, here's the scenario: if Alabama wins, they're in. Clemson wins, they're in. Notre Dame will get in because they've been undefeated. They have not. They've had those games, but they've won their games. So Notre Dame would be in, and then the toss-up would be either Ohio State or Michigan would get into that 4 spot. That's because if you think about it, if Ohio State beats Michigan and then beats Northwestern, they're at number 4. So it'll basically be like the first year of the playoff. Ohio State would be at number 4. But what do you?
I feel like I hate to say it because I'm not Michigan at all, but I just feel like Michigan's better than Ohio State this year, and they might pull it out, even though I don't want it to happen. But I think that the top 4 is going to stay the same.
So you think Michigan will stay at that the 4 spot?
Michigan will stay at the 4
Mhm.
because they're not going to put Michigan ahead of Notre Dame because Notre Dame beat them.
Right.
So that would just be wrong to put Michigan ahead of Notre Dame.
Right.
Even if even if Michigan has that extra game,
Right.
they're still not going to put Michigan ahead because that would be insane.
Right.
Because Notre Dame beat them.
Right.
And if Alabama could lose. They do have a tough schedule coming up, but I don't see them losing, and I definitely do not see Clemson losing to Pitt in the ACC championship game.
That's who Clemson's playing.
They're not this weekend. Who do they play this weekend? I was literally just looking at it.
South Carolina, I think, because it's a
Yes,
Indian
South
State.
Carolina. Thank you.
Yeah.
They play South Carolina this week. I don't see them losing there, and I don't see them losing to Pitt.
But here,
the only way they lose to Pitt is if Pitt pulls off this magical game where they win 9-6.
I'll say like what happened was it last year? Pitt knocked off Clemson at Clemson. I think it was it last year, Or no, or was it 2 years ago?
Who? What?
Pitt knocked
Sorry.
off Clemson.
Yeah, the only way like Pitt wins like those like big games like against like bigger opponents is they like
Their
have
def-
like these really low scoring games that are like 9-6 or
Right. Or the defense.
12-9, where the defense just shows up and like
Right.
there's no offense in the games, like all field goals.
Right. And I mean, Joe, I want to get your prediction. Who do you have as your top four? Who would you put?
My
with your
top four?
Yeah, your top four.
I mean, who do I? Who do I want?
Yeah,
I want.
mean,
Who do I think? I honestly think it'll be Alabama,
mhm.
Clemson,
Mhm.
Notre Dame. I think it's gonna stay, but like stay the way it is right now.
Okay.
But like if I wanted it,
Mhm.
I like Washington State.
Mhm.
I love Washington State. I like Minshew.
Okay.
He's
I
cool
think
guy.
the Pac-12 is so weak.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
he's cool.
I mean,
It's so
since Washington,
weak.
Washington is good. Washington and Washington State are both good teams, but you look at the rest of the Pac-12. Oregon, USC.
I feel like Washington State got all their credit from beating Oregon and Stanford, and those teams are now not ranked anymore. They've both lost like either three. I know Stanford, I believe, has 4 losses now or 5 losses. Oregon has 3 or 4 losses, and they're not ranked anymore. And they get so much credit for winning like these games. But I mean, I just don't think the Pac-12 is that strong anymore. They have Washington coming up.
It'd be cool
but
to see UCF to get in there too.
I would like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody would. So we're just about at the 10 o'clock hour. So once again, we thank you for listening. I'm Ryan Kirby saying thank you for listening to The Sports Radio Show. I'd like to thank my buddies, Jimmy and Joe. Thank you guys for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for
Had
having
a lot
us.
of fun. So we thank you again for listening to The Sports Radio Show here on Lake Effect Radio. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for listening, and go Browns. Hopefully we're talking about a Browns win come next Monday. Have a great day, everybody.